Hey, John Hopkins, good to see you. First one on today. How's it going? See if we can get a couple people on this stream. I know we just started, and we are on a little bit early than we anticipated, but that is fine with us. I'm sure it's fine for you guys as well. Let me fix this up real quick and we'll be good to go. All right, so we got a couple people on right now. Got about 4. Like I said, I know we jumped on a little bit earlier than we said. If you were checking our Twitter, I don't know how many people saw that. We put out a couple hours ago. We were going to go live at 4:30, and it's around, see here, about 4:27, 4:25 for some of you guys, depending on what clock you're looking at. So we're a little early. And yes, it is Casual Thursday. I think it's something we're going to try to start here. When we do these live streams every Thursday, I think we're going to try to jump on and maybe make it a little Casual Thursday. We're always dressed up in the suit and the tie, and that has kind of been our what makes us stand out, and something that I certainly don't plan on going away from. But I think maybe every Thursday live stream we'll go a little casual, bring out a little sweater action. It is sweater weather after all. Maybe we'll bring out a little pullover. Who knows? We're just going to play it by ear. But, 9 times out of 10, you're definitely going to see us in the suit and tie, because that's what we do here at the Gridiron Expert, and that's certainly not going to change. But we like to switch it up a little bit. I like to have a little fun with it. We've got about 5 people in the chat right now. Right now, we've just got John Hopkins, so it's always good to see you. Brody L., always good to see you as well. Big-time Notre Dame fan. And like I said, bring your questions and comments, guys. This is the last live stream of the week. It is Thursday. We won't be doing another live stream until Sunday. Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, somewhere around there. And we'll give you all a better heads up for that as we get closer to time. But I am hoping to have a video shot. We've had a couple requests. I'm a big fan of it myself, of rankings. Way too early top 25s. Ranking every NFL quarterback. Ranking the head coaching changes. Ranking every college football quarterback per conference, of course. The 14 quarterbacks in the SEC, Big Ten, etc. Which one's the best in each conference. And we are working on all of those very diligently, and we'll have those out very soon. I'm hoping to have one of those shot and posted for you guys hopefully by tomorrow or definitely Saturday, without a doubt. I think we're going to have a coaching carousel breakdown, ranking the top coaching hires and coaching changes of the 2018-2019 offseason. So make sure you keep your eye out for that. And like I said, bring your questions and comments. We're going to be on here for about an hour tonight, maybe a little longer, depending on how the chat's going. And we always like talking to you guys. We also have a couple things that we have lined up for you guys as well. So, like I said, we got John Hopkins, Brody L., Blake Hobson. Good to see you as well. Got a couple people in the chat. Let's start diving into some questions. And I actually do have a couple comments and topics that I will address if we get to it. I had that for Tuesday night's live stream, and you guys ran away with that, and that was perfect. Makes my job easier, and actually makes it a lot more enjoyable for me. So the first thing, Brody L. said, what are the thoughts on the Miami-Florida game potentially being moved up a week earlier? And, that was actually one of the things we had up here. Florida and Miami supposed to meet in week 1, which I believe is on August 31st. That's when they were originally supposed to meet. Now, there are talks of Florida and Miami potentially playing a week earlier, so being played on August 24th, about a week earlier than every other week 1 game. I don't see anything wrong with that. I would personally enjoy that. Look, the past couple of years, we've had a couple games that have been played a week, maybe 2 weeks before the official week 1, when all the big time Power 5, I think we had, a game in Australia last year. What was it, like Rice and Stanford? We had, I think, Colorado State played in a game. There were, this is a couple of years ago. But of course, we have a couple of those early games that come on, but they're not that exciting. I mean, football is football, don't get me wrong, but Florida and Miami, that is a blockbuster game. That's one of those big-time week 1 games that if they were to move that back a week earlier, I think would get a lot more attention to, because listen to some of these week 1 games that we've got coming up. We've got Houston, Oklahoma, we've got Florida State, Boise State, you got Florida, Miami, you got Auburn, Oregon, and then, of course, you've got another handful of games out there that are going to be big and maybe would take that attention away from this. So for Florida and Miami, a big in-state rival. You move that a week earlier to about August 24th. That's going to get a lot of attention. I think it'd be watched regardless, but we'll definitely get a lot more hype, a lot more attention, and would give us a really, really good football game. Kind of like almost like, way earlier. It gives a week earlier, and it'd actually be a game people would be intrigued in and could have playoff implications, and obviously in-state rival implications as well. So I'm all for it, Brody. I really am. I don't see anything against that. I know it's easier said than done. It is, but I think that's totally fine. I personally would like to see that. John Hopkins, how will Houston be this upcoming season? Well, Houston, let me tell you what, getting Dana Holgorsen over from West Virginia, that is a huge get for the Cougars, without a doubt. I mean, to take away a coach from a Power 5 school and bring him to a Group of 5 school, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. Cameraman edits, any woman would be lucky to have me. I appreciate that. And hey, he might be right. Who knows? I'm certainly not going to argue with that. But hey, Prince 6'1", good to see you as always. Glad to see you join the chat early this time too. I know you joined a little late last time, and that's probably on us. But I'm glad you're able to join us. Mike Myrick, what's going on? Glad you're able to join the chat as well. Now we're starting to see some guys roll in. This is what we like to see. So good to see you guys. MCD Sports 4. Always good to see you as well. So now we're getting the regulars in here, and certainly glad to see you guys. But John, how will Houston be? Dana Holgorsen coming over, I think he's going to really transform this Houston team, who struggled a little bit last year, but have consistently been a very solid Group of 5 school. And they have the opportunity to pull some huge upsets. I think they play they play Oklahoma and Washington State this season, I believe. That's two very good Power 5 schools that they had the chance to beat. Now, I'm not saying they will beat them, but if they could even take away one of those games, and I think it would be more likely that they would beat Washington State than Oklahoma, I think Dana Holgorsen's got this team going in the right direction. He hasn't even coached a game there yet. But after what I saw him do at West Virginia, the type of mind that he has, Houston is going to be in good shape for a very, very long time. I think they're looking at, once again, contending for an American Athletic Conference championship, although I think right now the front runner still is Central Florida, UCF. Now, I did see one comment come through here. Britt Hall, who's become, I guess, a sort of a regular. He was here last Tuesday. Now he's joining us again on Thursday. Do you think the way Tom Brady kisses his children is viewed as acceptable by his teammates? Does it affect team chemistry? And we've got a joker in the comments joking about. And if anybody did see Tom Brady's Tom versus Time, I think it was Facebook series or Amazon series, whatever. It was like a documentary over him and his life. There were some very odd moments in that. I don't know. Does it affect team chemistry? No. Look, the man loves his children. The man loves his family. Is it maybe the way that some people would handle loving their children or family? It might be a little different from others, but I think he's a good man. And maybe it's a little odd, but hey, he still got 6 rings and is still the greatest quarterback of all time. And I hope that answers your question, Mr. Hall. And Cameraman Edits, I appreciate that comment as well. Always good to see you on the chat. He's become fairly regular as well. Border Bob, talking about the Heisman race. And if you guys have followed us for a while, if you guys have watched the Gridiron Expert for a while, you know that we play a lot of stock into the Heisman Trophy race. You know that we focus a lot on that, especially hitting around week 3. We have a Heisman preview and kind of put our Heisman list up every week, and analyzing the stats and analyzing who we think would be the front runner for the Heisman at that point in time. And he says that they already have Tua Tagovailoa leading the Heisman Trophy chase. I'm totally biased as a Clemson fan for Trevor Lawrence. Can you make an argument? This is a great question. Can you make an argument to change my mind towards Tua? I just don't see it. He had his chance. That's a great question. And kind of putting it on me, can I try to persuade a Clemson fan who has arguably, I think, the best, if not, top 3 quarterback in college football right now, and Trevor Lawrence, to why Tua Tagovailoa should deserve to win the Heisman over Trevor Lawrence going into the 2019 season? And I know Prince 6'1", you know Border Bob a little bit, both of you big time Clemson fans. And he says Trevor Lawrence has the weapons to win the Heisman for sure. And absolutely, he is a legitimate Heisman Trophy contender without a doubt. There's no doubt in my mind that he I think right now your top 2 quarterbacks in college football are Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence. Now, why could I argue that Tua should win the trophy over Trevor Lawrence? And I think, Tua did have his chance And it's going to really, for me, what happened to Tua was he was playing lights out football for about the first 10 weeks of the season, and then he did kind of get a little hurt. I know he had that knee injury, and then even got taken out of the SEC championship game, which if you know, those games, the conference championship games do help you out in that Heisman Trophy race, because the Heisman Trophy is not presented until I think the week after. So I think him getting hurt and then the continued dominance of Kyler Murray, because no one could stop him. I think what did him in was Tua getting hurt, Kyler Murray's dominant performance, not only in the Big 12 championship game, but that game against West Virginia, that 59-56 or 59-50, whatever the final score was of that game. That's what really, I think, sent it over the edge in favor of Kyler Murray. I think Tua Tagovailoa, while Trevor Lawrence does have the talent and the weapons for him, Tua Tagovailoa, and people aren't going to like this, I'm sure, but he is playing in the SEC. And I know some people say, well, the SEC isn't dominant outside of teams like Alabama, Georgia, maybe LSU now. But he's playing in the SEC, going up against some very talented defenses. How he performs in those games will, I think, be a major factor, because Trevor Lawrence is in the ACC. And the ACC, I'm not dogging on them. They are a good conference. But who is the biggest front runner outside of Clemson in the ACC this year? Virginia's on the rise, but they're in a completely different division as Clemson. So you got Virginia, Miami's not what they used to be. Now I think Manny Diaz will get them back to that point, but they're not what they were a couple years ago. Florida State certainly not as dominant as they have been. Willie Taggart really needs to get things turned around there. So, I think Tua Tagovailoa is going up against some very tough defenses in the SEC. Texas A&M's on the rise. He's got a game against LSU, of course, because of just being in the SEC West. SEC championship game, if they were to get there, they've got Auburn in the West, but if they have to get the SEC championship game, they'll more than likely go up against Georgia or Florida. And if he has dominant performances in all of those tough games, then I think you can make the case that Tua would be better than Trevor Lawrence in that sense, despite how well Trevor Lawrence I expect will play this season. So that would kind of be my argument there. Quality of opponents, quality of competition, but those are arguably the best two quarterbacks in the league by far. Would not be surprised to see both of them go to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Prince 6'1", responding to a question earlier from Mina saying that South Carolina has the toughest schedule next year, and I haven't really broken down everybody's schedule yet. I haven't really taken a whole lot of stock and looked into that much, but he does say that South Carolina, or USC Junior as he likes to call them, plays Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, etc. He's right. They're in the SEC East, so you're automatically playing Georgia and Florida. Tennessee is certainly on the rise. Kentucky, no slouch anymore. They do have Clemson, of course, the annual rivalry game, and then your cross-division game is going to be against Alabama. I mean, that is very, very difficult. South Carolina, who I thought was going to be making major strides with Will Muschamp last year, kind of disappointed, especially laid an egg in their bowl game against Virginia, losing 28-0. They have a very difficult schedule. Now, I can't vouch and say that's the toughest. I haven't looked at many people's yet and really studied that yet, but that certainly is a very, very difficult schedule, without a doubt. Stanford, legalized quack, big-time Oregon fan. Also good to see you here. Saying Stanford has a really tough schedule as well. Northwestern, Central Florida, Notre Dame, etc. People in the Pac-12. And that's a good point. That's a very good point. And how will Stanford respond to that? And how will they perform in those games? Stanford used to be, king of the Pac-12, or were constantly contending in the Pac-12. Washington kind of came up on the rise. USC is always back and forth. Oregon was in the hunt for a while, and I think Oregon will be in the hunt again this year. How will Stanford and David Shaw and that Stanford Cardinal team, how will they perform with a very difficult schedule? Tate Hill, I think he's new to the chat as well. Do you think that Ole Miss is once again violating recruiting policies by hiring strippers after the signing of that running back? Well, I think that kind of speaks for itself. Are they violating recruiting policies by hiring strippers after the signing of that running back? Well, yeah. I mean, we know kind of the bad stuff that went down at Ole Miss in the past. In Hugh Freeze. I mean, not only did Ole Miss were they cheating, recruiting violations, but then you had the issues of Hugh Freeze and his morals and what he did at that university. Now, of course, he's head coach, ironically, at Liberty, a very religious school. So, yeah, Ole Miss is in some deep trouble, man, and I feel for them. I feel for Missouri, the teams that can't go to bowl games, the teams that are having to face these sanctions. That's very frustrating for those fan bases to go out there and know that, yeah, you're playing for pride. Maybe you can pull off an upset. Maybe you can win a lot of games. But if you can't play for a championship, if you can't play for a postseason, you can go undefeated. But with that bowl ban, it doesn't do anything for you. So that's really frustrating. And I do feel for those players and for those fan bases, for those coaches, especially some of the players and coaches that obviously had nothing to do with it. If they weren't involved in that, but rules are rules, and we have to abide by those, and the NCAA has to abide by those, even though I don't think they always handle that in the correct way. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, yes, Ole Miss needs to get it together. MCD Sports 4, Stanford, USC Junior, toughest schedules. Also thinking that Missouri will win its appeal. Of course, Missouri appealing their bowl ban. And I thought that was kind of odd. I thought that was very harsh for Missouri to receive that. Did they cheat? Yes. But compared to some of the other schools that have gotten involved in scandals and have received very similar or lesser punishments, I don't think Missouri got a fair hearing in that. I don't know if they're going to win their appeal, but it's gonna be interesting, and I know Kelly Bryant and Barry Odom and this Missouri team that should have a pretty decent offense coming back. They're certainly hoping to win that appeal so they can try to win 8-9 games and go to a decent bowl game in the postseason. John Hopkins, how will Auburn be better after an underwhelming season? Well, I'm going to be quite honest with you, John. I don't think Auburn is going to be any better, and I think Auburn is a team, and like I said, I'm not making predictions now. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think their record's going to be or how they're going to do. I mean, a decent recruiting class, yes. Gus Malzahn, I think, on the hot seat, because you look at Gus Malzahn came in to win championships at Auburn. And he came in, and his first year was, 2013? And the first year there, he got them all the way to the national championship game, of course, falling to Florida State. And things were certainly looking up for them. But Auburn is either really, really good and in contention, beating teams such as Alabama or Georgia, or they're just lackluster, 7-5, 6-6. I know a couple of years ago, I think it was 2015, they just went 7-5 or 6-6, won the Birmingham Bowl over Memphis. That was a very underwhelming season. That was a year, I think, of 2015, where they started off the season number 6 in the nation, had Jeremy Johnson at quarterback, and people were considering them a playoff dark horse. And then the same thing with last year. People thought Auburn was going to be very, very dominant, and they just tanked. They had a dominant performance against Purdue in their bowl game. That was great way to end the season. I think they clinched 8 wins with that. But the year before, they ended the season losing 2 straight games. I mean, they beat Alabama, went to the SEC championship game, lost to Georgia, and then lost to Central Florida. And that's very frustrating because you beat Georgia, you're going to the college football playoff. You can't win them all. But Auburn, I think Gus Malzahn have been very lackluster, been very disappointing. This season, it's not going to get any easier, and I have no reason to expect that Auburn's going to go from an 8-5 team to once again competing in the SEC West. The West is tough. A&M is getting better. LSU has certainly shown improvement and gotten a lot better, back to where we usually used to see LSU from a couple years ago. Alabama, of course, the top of the list there. They've still got Georgia over in the East. They opened the season against Oregon. And they opened the season against Washington last year and got a win over the Huskies. I'm not saying they can't beat Oregon. A rematch of that, 2010 national championship game, 2011 national championship game. But Oregon returning so many star power. Justin Herbert at quarterback, a very solid recruiting. And we've said this over and over and over again about the Ducks. But if I had to initially pick this game right now on February 28th, so months away from this opening game, I would pick Oregon. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to stick to that, but right now I would be picking Oregon to defeat Auburn in that season opener. And right there, you're automatically losing the game, and Auburn's not going to go undefeated. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to beat Alabama and Georgia. They might not be able to beat both of them, so maybe there's 3 losses right there. They're going to slip up a couple times. If Auburn goes 8-4, 7-5, I think Gus Malzahn's out. So I do not think Auburn's going to be better this season. I really do not. And that's just me. And that's no biasness towards Auburn. That's no hatred towards Auburn. I have nothing against them. That's just the way I see it. It's a very, very difficult schedule, as is any team in the SEC. And now teams really need to start looking towards, scheduling decent non-conference opponents, because that's what helps your resume. And that's what Auburn's doing a great job of doing. Alabama tends to do a decent job of that, but it's going to be very interesting to see. So how are they going to get better? They're going to have to get better offensive production. Jarrett Stidham, I never thought was all that. I thought he was good. Didn't think he was that great. They're going to have to get some better quarterback play and replace some solid people on the defensive side of the ball. But that's just my opinion. Prince 6'1" asking, when will the Gus Bus crash at Auburn? Well, if everything happened that I just said, it's gonna crash in 2019. It's slowly crashing. It's rolling down the hill, and it's about to crash. But can Gus Malzahn get behind the wheel and save it for another year, or is he just going to let it go? Emperor of Rome, good to see you. I'm sure you would love to hear what we're talking about. As a big Bama fan, we're kind of dogging Auburn a little bit, but no worries on being late. Glad that you were able to join us here for a little bit. And Jeff Wilson, same to you. Glad you were able to join us, as always. Always glad when you're around. But the Gus Bus will crash this season, I think, if they go 7-5, 8-4. Things I don't think are trending up for Auburn right now. Despite the way they finished the season, beating Purdue and down at like 56-14, whatever the final score was, I do not have a lot of hope and faith in Auburn and Gus Malzahn in 2019. Now, I could be proved wrong, and like I said, I'm not sticking to that. Wait till predictions come out in June. But right now, that's my initial take, and I think it could crash here. And I think Auburn made a very big mistake signing him to that long contract extension just a few years ago. Legalized Quack says, pretty bad. A team that went 3-5 in their conference, Auburn, beat the Pac-12 champ. And he's basically just saying, I mean, Auburn, who struggled mightily in the SEC, was able to beat the Pac-12 champion, which means was the Pac-12 champion that good to begin with? Was Washington all they were cracked up to be? Now, I believe that Washington received a lot of hype. I had them, I think, making the college football playoff last year, and I firmly believe that they could have been really close in the running had they not slipped up to California. I think they lost that game 12-10. That's what did them in. The loss to Oregon wasn't bad. They beat Washington State in the season finale, beat Utah in a very strong defensive battle, 10-3 in the Pac-12 championship game. Had they not lost to California, I think they would have been in the hunt for the college football playoff without a doubt. Auburn was not a bad loss at the time. Of course, as the season progressed, it ended up looking like a pretty bad loss. Washington still made the Rose Bowl, though, as Pac-12 champion, and made the game respectable against Ohio State, just not. The score was much closer than it really was. And Emperor of Rome, that's a great question. Some big news in the sporting world today that Jason Witten, one of the greatest tight ends, I think, in Dallas Cowboy history, is coming out of retirement. As you all know, he was a commentator for Monday Night Football alongside one of my favorite commentators, Joe Tessitore. He's coming out of retirement to go play once again for the Dallas Cowboys. And my thoughts on that is I think that's great. I think, it's not uncommon to see players do that. We've seen many players decide they're going to retire, and then after a year, maybe two, they decide to come back out of retirement. Jason Witten is getting older. We know that. I think Jason Witten truly, truly wants to win a Super Bowl. But can he do that with the Dallas Cowboys? But to answer your question, I think it's great. I think it's a really good thing for him. I've always been a big fan of Jason Witten. I've always admired him, not as just a player, but as a person. So I'm going to be very glad to see him back out on the field again. And I truly do want to see him win a Super Bowl. Just a player like that put so much work into it and has been such a dominant force on the field. You want to see a player like that win a Super Bowl. I think he'll go down, if he can, as one of the best players to never win a Super Bowl. The Cowboys are building a team to do that. Made the playoffs this year, made it to the divisional round, gave the Rams a fight, only losing, I think, 30-22. They have Dak Prescott, they have Ezekiel Elliott, a strong offensive line, Amari Cooper now, and a defense that is getting there. I'm not saying the Cowboys are going to make a run for the Super Bowl this year, but I think Jason Witten wants to stick around. Maybe he saw something that thinks, hey, maybe if I can get back in it, I might be able to at least get to the Super Bowl. He's never even played in one. So I think that's truly what he wants to do. Or maybe he just missed the game. But I think it's a great thing to do. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And people were dogging him, saying he wasn't that good of a commentator anyways. I wouldn't go that far, but I think football is definitely back on the field is where he needs to be, and I'm very excited to watch him play. And another good point by Emperor of Rome, go help us out, like the videos. It certainly helps with our analytics and helps us out a lot. So we have 4 likes right now. Would love to get that back up to double digits like we had on Tuesday. So definitely go help us out there. And as always, just a reminder, I don't like to talk about it that much, but the Super Chat is available if anybody wants to help contribute to the channel. I know we had a couple donations last live stream and the previous couple live streams, and those have been greatly appreciated. I mean, more than you guys know. So that's always available as well, and on any little bit helps. And man, those likes are coming up right now, already up to 8. So we're just 2 away from double digits. So thank you guys for that. Jeff Wilson coming out and saying that, how did Auburn lose to Tennessee at home? Is that even possible? Tennessee sucks. Well, that's obviously way back in the past, all the way back in October. Tennessee, though, and Jeremy Pruitt, he's building something there, returns a lot of players this season. Tennessee should make a bowl game in 2019, certainly back up on the rise, and once again showing, I think, how bad and how how much Auburn really struggled last year. I really do. And even though that was played at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Britt Hall, once again, back in the chat. Should Arkansas have waited for Gus, meaning they would have kept the whale of a coach, Brett Bielema, of course, or do you think it was a good move to hire potentially one of the worst coaches in Arkansas history? Well, Mr. Hall, I will say that for those of you that don't know, Arkansas and Gus Malzahn did have ties back in the early 2000s. Around 2005, 2006, Gus Malzahn was offensive coordinator for the Razorbacks, and they had a bit of a falling out with at the time the head coach Houston Nutt for the Razorbacks, and Gus Malzahn had a bit of a falling out, and the administration was so stubborn that they never wanted to have Gus Malzahn back on their coaching staff, whether as a coordinator or as a head coach. I think Gus Malzahn would have been a perfect guy for the job for the Razorbacks because, to be honest, the Razorbacks have never been, and quite frankly, probably for a long time, never will be a SEC title contender or a national title contender. Now, they were in the running for that many years ago under Bobby Petrino, getting them all the way up to number 3 in the nation at one point, getting them to the Sugar Bowl. And I think for now, after the years of struggles that Arkansas has had, even under Brett Bielema, they were never that dominant. Razorback fans would love to have, an 8-win season, a 9-win season, 10-win season. I think eventually they would like to break through and finally make an SEC championship. But I think right now their priority would just be getting back to the postseason, winning some big games, maybe beating Alabama every now and then. They haven't beaten Alabama since 2006. Now, as in terms of Chad Morris, their current head coach, being one of the worst coaches in Arkansas history, you can't judge that now, as can any team judge a coach after 1 year and claim them as potentially being one of the worst in history. 2-10, yes, was the worst record that Arkansas had ever had in their history as a football program. But we know that anytime a new head coach comes in, that we cannot expect them to produce great results. And if you're staying along the lines of Arkansas, Houston Nutt did phenomenal things in his first year there, but Bobby Petrino, who, had he not gotten into a scandal, I think would have had Arkansas in a very good position for an SEC title and national title, went 5-7 in his first year. So yeah, 5-7, you're 1 win away from a bowl game, but still had a losing record, still was very uncompetitive. Chad Morris has an offense that is very different from what Brett Bielema ran at Arkansas, and it's going to take some time to put that into place, and you just got to give him some time to do that. I wouldn't go as far as say he's one of the worst in history, though. And John Hopkins says, will Arkansas be better after going 2-10 last season? I do think there will be signs of improvement. If Arkansas sticks around at 2-10, then maybe you can go and say, yeah, Chad Morris is one of the worst coaches in Razorback history, and it'll be time for him to get fired, because no team, especially in a conference like the SEC, needs to go 2-10 back-to-back years. They should show major signs of improvement and maybe get borderline bowl eligible. Not going as far as they will, but they should win at least, I would think, 5 games. Maybe they pull off an upset here or there and are able to get to that coveted 6-win mark, which would get them to bowl eligibility. And that would be a major step forward for Arkansas. And that's not unheard of, because we saw, down in Waco, Baylor going 1-11 in year 1 under Matt Rule. And in year 2 going from 1 wins to 7 wins, 6-6, and winning the bowl game, a thrilling bowl game, number 1 on our list, against Vanderbilt, to finish 7-6. So it is not unheard of to see teams make a very drastic improvement in just a span of 1 season. Brody L., who would you rather have as your team's head coach, Brian Kelly or Jim Harbaugh? Both head coaches I do admire. Both head coaches I do enjoy watching. Their passion for the game, and they're a lot of fun to watch on the sideline. As of right now, though, it's a very tough question, because both these coaches seem to not be – they never are able to seem to get the job done. I would probably go out and say Jim Harbaugh, though. I think Jim Harbaugh is a good recruiter. I think he knows the game well. As frustrating as it is for Michigan fans to see them continuously fail in the big games to Ohio State, into the New Year's Six caliber bowl games, he has yet to get them to a Big Ten championship, and that's where Michigan needs to be. I think I would probably go Jim Harbaugh for now. Tate Hill back in the chat. Very good question. One that we actually did have on our list of things to talk about, so we'll go ahead and talk about it now. What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray going to the NFL? He had a lot of money with the A's, the Oakland Athletics, and he just measured in as one of the shortest quarterbacks in the NFL Combine. Of course, the NFL Combine starting today. Do you think it will pay off, or do you think he will play, or was he just stupid? And that's been a very hot topic among lots of sportscasters and probably some NFL scouts out there. For me personally, I would have told Kyler Murray to go play baseball for the Oakland Athletics. A lot of money to be made in the MLB. The Athletics were offering him a lot. He wasn't just a normal MLB draft pick. He wasn't just a plain, oh yeah, he's good enough to play baseball. He was the number 9 overall pick in the MLB draft. First round, number 9 overall pick in the MLB draft. To a good team, he's going to go out to California, go play in Oakland. I mean, I did not agree with him choosing to go to the NFL. Now, some people say the NFL is better in terms of recognition. Maybe he's going to be recognized more. He's going to become more famous. He'll still make plenty of money in the NFL, and I do think he'll get drafted. But he is one of the shortest quarterbacks in the NFL. Now, we can't go based off of height. We've seen many quarterbacks before that have been judged on their height and have done extremely well, such as Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. Maybe he's not. Maybe they weren't as short as Kyler Murray, but they were still short. And another thing to say is there have been multiple quarterbacks that have passed up the MLB. Most recently, that I can think of, Russell Wilson, who was a MLB draft pick, could have gone and played for the Texas Rangers, chose to go to the NFL, and he's done great things. Made it to 2 Super Bowls, won one against the Broncos, should have won another one against the Patriots, and has become the Seahawks franchise quarterback and has done extremely well. Can Kyler Murray do the same? Kyler Murray's style of play, to me, is much different than Russell Wilson's, though. Kyler Murray likes to run, I think, a little bit more than Russell Wilson did. Not to take away from him being a good passer, he is. He can sling it. He's got an arm. But I think he would have been wiser to go play baseball. He can play longer. He can make more money. I think it's safer in terms of risking injuries. I think that should have been where he had gone. Now, I do think that if the NFL does not work out, Kyler Murray can land a spot in the MLB. I do think that can happen. I think if he chooses to back out, or if things don't work out well, he can go play in the MLB. It's not like he's just passed up and he'll never get that opportunity again. But he had it sitting right in front of him. He could take it now, never look back, and go to town, and I think he made a mistake doing so. And that's a very, very good question. And that literally was something that we had on our list of things to talk about, so I'm glad we had that brought up in the chat. So great question from Mr. Hill there. John Hopkins, thoughts about Bob Stoops getting a job in the XFL? As you all know, former Oklahoma head coach Bob Stoops did take a job, I think, as general manager and head coach in the XFL down in Dallas. And that's just a very, very interesting decision by Stoops to go do that. He's been out of the game for a couple of years now, of course, retiring all of a sudden from Oklahoma, giving the reins over to Lincoln Riley. But I think, as is the case for Jason Witten, you miss the game enough, you want to try to get back into it. And I think the XFL is going to be a little bit lighter of a competition for Bob Stoops. The stress level and the competition level not going to be as much as that of an NFL or college job. And so the XFL, I think, a very good middle ground for Bob Stoops. He's still getting back into the coaching game, but doesn't have to have as much stress as he did in the college game. He's going to put his name back out there. He's going to be relevant again, much like Steve Spurrier is now with the Orlando Apollos and the AAF. So that's phenomenal. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I'm glad the XFL is coming back. I don't think it's going to be as good as the AAF is right now, but it will certainly be fun to watch. And hey, football is football regardless. Henry H., who do I think will win the Big Ten next year? So another prediction, not going that far yet. But look, you've got your constant powerhouses in the Big Ten. I do not think, it's going to be like a team like Wisconsin or anybody like that. You've got Wisconsin that was on the rise. Iowa was looking good. It's going to be someone like typically, and I know this is a cop-out answer, and I'm not making this decision now, but it's going to be Ohio State. It's going to be Ohio State. Excuse me, it's been a long day. But it's going to be Ohio State. It's going to be a Michigan. I don't know if I'd go as far as say Penn State or Michigan State, teams that do have some questions to answer after losing so much talent this year. But right now, I think the clear-cut answer, or for me right now, it would be Ohio State. Ryan Day comes in, a solid head coach. Justin Fields coming in, a decent quarterback that didn't get a lot of playing time at Georgia, of course, but I think will do fine in the Buckeye system. Plenty of talent there. I think Big Ten is Ohio State's conference until proven otherwise. Now, Michigan will, of course, once again, try to give them a run for their money, but can they finally beat the Buckeyes? That's the million-dollar question. Jared Spanos, who do I have, Florida or Miami? And we talked about that early on in the earlier on in the chat because we were talking about the potential of Florida-Miami being pushed back to August 24th and not being played in Week 1 on August 31st. And I said right now, if I had to choose, I would be choosing Florida. And I know some people might not like to hear that either. I know we have a lot of Miami fans in the chat and a lot of Miami viewers. And this is no offense and not me dogging on Miami in any means. But Florida showed they were on the rise. Dan Mullen's got something building there with the Gators. Miami, not so much. Manny Diaz is going to have to come in. They've got to find themselves a decent quarterback that can make some good decisions. Dan Enos coming in as offensive coordinator, I think will get that. And usually Dan Enos' quarterbacks take some major strides after just 1 year as him as their coordinator or quarterbacks coach. So Miami, I think, is going to be relevant very soon. Manny Diaz, the reason Miami was relevant these past couple of years is because of their very strong defense. He was their defensive coordinator. I would expect that defense to stay strong. But I think Florida right now will win that game. And like I said, that could change. Don't hold me to that. Things change in June or July when we actually sit down and we do our predictions. But that's my initial take. If I had to choose right now, it would be Florida. And Emperor of Rome, we got a long question from Britt Hall. We'll get to that in 1 second. But, hey, Britt Hall, new viewer, contributing right into the chat like he's been here for a while. And that's what we like to see. So we definitely appreciate that. Emperor of Rome, in your opinion, what is the shortest an NFL quarterback can be? I don't know what the exact height was of Kyler Murray, and that's on me. I think, what was he? 5'8", 5'9"? I don't know the exact height. I don't know the exact height of Drew Brees, but I would say the shortest an NFL quarterback can be, in my eyes, probably needs to be about, because of the success that we have seen from shorter quarterbacks, such as a Drew Brees or a Russell Wilson, I would say 5'10". And Jared Spano says no particular height. I mean, look, if a quarterback can play, and I said Britt Hall responds 5'10". That's what I was thinking too about 5'10". If a quarterback can come out there and play and lead his team to victory and be able to make the throws necessary, it doesn't matter what height. But you've also got to be tall enough to see over your offensive line. There's something to be said for that too. There's something to be said for, having the strength and the height to get the ball to where it needs to be and to see where your wide receivers are going, to see over your offensive line and to call audibles and read the defense. I would say 5'10" would be my lowest height for an NFL quarterback. But if there is one shorter that shows me that he can play, I don't care. If my quarterback can lead me to victory, then I don't care how tall he is. It doesn't matter to me. But that's about me. About 5'10", Britt Hall agrees. And going back to his question, Britt Hall is a very, very, I'll tell you what, he's flat out honest. He's flat out honest and, says what he wants to say, and I admire that. People don't say the hard things anymore. People don't tell you how they really feel, and he's definitely going to tell you that. Now that Johnny Cokehead has been banned from the CFL for a breach of agreement, does he go to the AAF, or does he find a cardboard sign and a bridge to sit under? Is he good enough to play in the AAF? For those of you that don't know, he's referring to the infamous Johnny Manziel, star quarterback from Texas A&M, NFL draft bust with the Cleveland Browns, and got into the Canadian Football League, and that was huge for the Canadian Football League. I mean, that was a big-time player name that people wanted to see, probably boosted their ratings for a little bit, and I think in his first... So, I'm gonna answer your question right now, short and simple. In his first appearance in the Canadian Football League, or his first start, I think he threw 4 interceptions, somewhere around there. An ungodly amount of interceptions. And this isn't dogging on the Canadian Football League, because it is competitive, and there have been many players that can go there and still make their way back into the NFL or a higher level of football. But if he can't perform well in the Canadian Football League, I don't think he can perform well in the AAF. The AAF, in my opinion, is basically almost like the D League for the NFL. This is an opportunity for, and a lot of these players in the AAF are former NFL players, and technically Johnny Manziel is a former NFL player. But he didn't succeed well in the CFL. He didn't succeed well in the NFL. I do not think he would succeed well in the American Alliance of American Football. And as much as I would like to see it, he's got enough money. For your comment about cardboard and sitting under a bridge, he's got the money. He's got a little bit of money from his contract in the NFL. He's got a little bit of money from that. Probably got a little bit of money from the CFL, but he is not he will never make it back into the NFL. If I were any owner or general manager in the NFL, I would never want him on my team. Too much drama. He's not going to give my team any production or anything that's going to benefit my team. Why even take the risk, or why even deal with that, risking another him substance abuse from him, or some comment that he says, or breach of an agreement or whatever. Same thing I thought, and I think Britt even mentioned this back earlier on Tuesday about Josh Gordon. Teams were risky to take a chance on him, and I mean, he did fine with the Patriots, helped them out, win a couple games, made some history, but you knew eventually it was always going to it wasn't going to work out. And Mike Myrick says Johnny Manziel's parents have money, he will always be okay. And unfortunately, he's probably right. In my eyes, at some point, the parents have got to let go and let their kids fend for themselves. He is an adult man. He's making these decisions on his own. He can fend for himself. Now, I'm not saying the parents should absolutely just let him go and just say forget about him and whatever happens. You got to be there for your children. You got to be there for your family. But you also have to let them learn from their mistakes, something that Johnny Manziel has not done over his entire career since college, so it's about 2012 to now, so over the past 7 years. So overall, answering your question, Mr. Hall, he is not good enough to play in the American Alliance of American Football. I think a team will take a chance on him that will boost ratings, that will draw people in. People will want to watch him play again. Maybe he does great things with them. I don't know. But I do not think he's good enough to play. But I think he would certainly like to try to get his name in there, because like I said, a lot of these players have an opportunity in the AAF to make a comeback and try to get back into the NFL at some point. And Border Bob, thank you so much. A super chat. We really do appreciate that. As we've said before, any contribution, any amount counts. It really, truly does. And so we truly appreciate that. Thank you so much. Your support does not go without notice. We truly do appreciate that. And his question is Muschamp gone from South Carolina if they don't win 6 games? And I would say absolutely. 6 games. If he can't get to a bowl game this season, despite how difficult we have talked about their schedule being, we addressed earlier that they have to play Alabama. They have to play the 2 teams that met in the national championship last year and have consistently been playing for the national title or the college football playoff. Alabama and Clemson. South Carolina simply does not have the talent, in my eyes, to beat either of them. So there's 2 losses right there. I don't know if they have the talent to beat Georgia or Florida. Last year was supposed to be the breakout year for South Carolina, I thought, and they just weren't able to get the job done there. Now, I know Florida was a bit of a surprise. I was bold and had South Carolina at Williams-Brice Stadium beating Georgia in just week 2, and they did not show up there. So if that's the case, they would have 4 losses. Maybe they slip up against the Tennessee. Maybe they slip up in a non-conference game where they shouldn't. So it is highly possible that South Carolina doesn't win 6 games. It's highly possible that South Carolina only wins 6 games. And I think this will be Will Muschamp's 4th year with the Gamecocks, 5th year with the Gamecocks. And as you start to hit those years, those is really when you're supposed to start taking strides forward and at least being competitive with some of the upper teams in your division if you're not one of them already. So yeah, if he doesn't win 6 games, he is absolutely out. I would be shocked if South Carolina did not get rid of him then. That would be an utter shock if he did not go to a bowl game and they kept him around. He needs to win 6 games. I would go as far as he needs to win at least 7 this year to be, once again, looking good. And if he wins 7 and they keep him, he will certainly be on the hot seat going into 2020. So, but once again, Border Bob, thank you so much for your contribution in the super chat, and once again, a very good question. I know as a if you are a South Carolina fan, you're a Clemson fan actually. I know because you and Prince were talking about it earlier, but I'm sure you might like to see Will Muschamp going out of South Carolina. But for those of you that are South Carolina fans, you do have a little bit to worry about, without a doubt, and I hate to say that for you guys. Blue Diablo, great question. Do you think a new NCAA football game will ever be made again? And we talked about this a little bit in the last live stream on Tuesday night about whether college athletes should be paid or not. I think the majority of us agreed no, that they should not. Will an NCAA football game ever be made again? Not the way that we've had it before. It will not be called NCAA football. It will not be produced by EA. It will not be nearly as good as the ones that we had for years and years. I mean, I know I bought every single, for as old as I can remember, when I was, could comprehend how to play video games, I bought every single NCAA football game. It was that's just the way I was. Every summer, that was what I wanted to do. And unfortunately, and I think as many of us were, we were heartbroken when they announced that NCAA 14 would be the last one they would produce. Now, there are other companies out there and other people that are trying to produce another football type game. Of course, we still have Madden, but another college football type game. There are just so many copyright issues in terms of fight songs, in terms of colors and logos and team names that you have to go through. And of course, with players, the main reason that these video games were stopped being produced was because they were using their likeness and they weren't getting paid for it. Now, they weren't using their exact names. You can, if you go back and play any NCAA football game, if you do an exhibition and say you go play at Alabama, for example, it would say quarterback number whatever. Right now, it would be like quarterback number 13 or quarterback number 12 or whatever the number of the player was. It wouldn't tell you their name. They can't do that. Of course, they can only do that in the pros. They weren't making their faces look exactly like them. It was just using their position, their number, their height. It was everything. Their ratings. Tua Tagovailoa would be rated very high. Trevor Lawrence would be rated very high. And at some point, I think it was the Ed O'Bannon case where he brought that attention to that, and it got shut all down. And that's very unfortunate for us as fans of the game, both as football fans and just playing the video games. I know I'm hurt by that, and I don't know about you guys, but I still play my NCAA 14. I know we have a PlayStation 4. I know we have Xbox Ones, but I still sit down on my PlayStation 3 and play NCAA 14, especially through the summer. That's one of the things that does get me through the summer every now and then, is getting to play some football and doing Dynasty mode. That was always what I enjoyed doing. And then Mike Myrick agrees with me. He really misses that college football video game. I'm sure we all do. Because, look, as much as I love football, period, Madden football is just not the same as NCAA football. It's just not, in my eyes. Some people like it better, but college football, especially the college football video game, which is way better across the board than that of Madden and those pro games. But so it goes. Maybe one day we will get lucky. Maybe they will produce another one, but I don't think it's going to happen for a very, very long time, if that is the case. Mina Eldawane, I know we didn't get to your question earlier. I know you've asked it a couple times. Which conference do I think is the hardest to predict in college football? And I will be honest with you there and say that it is not even a group or a Power 5 conference. It is, for me, when I do my predictions every summer for you guys, and it's something that we love doing and are passionate about, it is the group of 5 conferences that are the most difficult to predict, because those are the conferences where I don't want to use the word upsets, but it's so unpredictable. Take for example, and I know we don't focus as much on the group of 5 schools as we do the Power 5, but take, for example, the Sun Belt Conference. You would project to have a front runner. Maybe that would be Troy, Arkansas State, Appalachian State. Georgia Southern had a breakout season this year. So you would project to have one of those schools that you would think, okay, yeah, they're going to be the winner of their division, meet in the conference championship game. But it's so unpredictable in those conferences because, I can tell you right now that, with almost 100% certainty that a team like, if they had to play, like Vanderbilt, would not beat Alabama in the SEC. But I can't tell you with 100% certainty that the worst team in the Sun Belt couldn't beat the best team in the Sun Belt, which could be Appalachian State, Georgia Southern, whoever it may be. It's very difficult to predict. Those group of 5 conferences are extremely, extremely difficult to predict. I'm not saying that the Power 5 aren't. They are still difficult, and we do put a lot of thought and time into those. But I think sometimes okay, there's no way, like, for example, we'll use another conference, and Illinois is not going to beat an Ohio State. Upsets do happen. They certainly happen. But I could tell I would not bank on, like, the Illinois beating Ohio State. I wouldn't bank on, like Pittsburgh beating Clemson or someone like that. And Britt Hall coming through with another clutch super chat, $2.99. Certainly do appreciate that. Like I said, any contribution counts and helps us out and greatly. So we certainly do appreciate that. Thank you for your support. His question is, and I know we have a couple other before that, and we will address those here in a second. But his question is, will Arkansas ever play Arkansas State? And if so, would they lose? And that's a great question because, you look around at all the different states and all the different conferences of in-state rivals. You know, just about every team I can think of plays another team from their state. Arkansas is the only team that does not do that. Now, granted, Arkansas, the state of Arkansas, period, only has 2 Division I schools in terms of FBS, Arkansas State. You don't have, they have Central Arkansas from the FCS and a couple other tiny schools here and there. But even LSU, Louisiana, they're the top dogs in the state of Louisiana, but they still play teams like a Tulane, Louisiana Tech, Louisiana Lafayette. They don't, they still play other in-state schools. They're keeping money in the state, as some people like to say. Florida, they're winning the season against Miami. And that's not even a surefire victory. So will Arkansas ever play Arkansas State? From reports that I have heard, no, they never will. Why won't they do it? Remains to be seen. Why would any school want to pay more money towards, to an out-of-state school when you could be trying to support the state as a whole? Not saying that they're going to be best friends. They're opposite corners. They got Fayetteville here and Jonesboro on the opposite side of the state. But would they lose? I would say no. I wouldn't say that every time, despite the struggle Arkansas has had. But Arkansas is still in the SEC. There's something to be said for having SEC talent. Arkansas, yes, has choked and lost games they shouldn't have. Lost to a horrible Colorado State team. Lost to North Texas. They've lost to Louisiana Monroe. They've lost to Toledo. That stuff happens. LSU lost to Troy. I mean, upsets do happen. But I would say 9 times out of 10 that Arkansas would defeat Arkansas State. And that is truly because I think there was such a big talent gap there. You're recruiting SEC caliber players that are coming to play in an SEC school, where you do have some belt schools here that aren't getting as high of recruits and are probably getting some decent transfers. But I would say 9 times out of 10, Arkansas would beat Arkansas State. Unfortunately, for people that want to see that happen, I don't think it ever will happen. And that is a really big shame. Arkansas, I truly believe this. I do believe Arkansas is scared to play Arkansas State. As some people like to point it out, for any in-state rivalry, especially some from a major gap of like an SEC and Sun Belt, Arkansas has nothing to gain from that game. They have everything to lose. Arkansas State has everything to gain and nothing to lose as well. If Arkansas were to lose to Arkansas State, it would look horrible. If they beat Arkansas State, people would say, well, that's to be expected. You should beat up on a Sun Belt school. Arkansas State went and played Alabama today. No one in their right mind predicted Arkansas State to win that game. They have nothing to lose. They're getting exposure. They're getting money. Alabama paying them to come play them. And if they beat Alabama or beat an SEC school, great. That's fantastic. We just pulled off a huge upset. If not, oh well, we move on. It's not a big deal to us. And I think that's the mentality Arkansas State would have playing Arkansas, and the same for Arkansas if they were able to play the Red Wolves. Legalized Quack making a good point. Oregon did play Arkansas State a few years back, and of course Oregon just annihilating the Red Wolves in that game. A couple of questions that we did miss here from the top. Jeff Wilson asking if Auburn or Missouri is better. Emperor of Rome responding saying Missouri is better. And I would say as of right now, Missouri, especially coming off of last season, Missouri would be by a slight edge better than the Tigers. He also asked Jeff Wilson, who do I think the worst team in the ACC and SEC right now? Legalized Quack says Arkansas. Richard Neal says Ole Miss. But of course, Richard Neal, being a Mississippi State fan, would say that. He does not agree that it's Ole Miss. In the SEC, as of right now, I would say Arkansas. I think, if I'm correct, there are only a couple teams that did not make the postseason in the SEC this year, Arkansas being one of them, Ole Miss because of their bowl ban, and Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. I think Vanderbilt made one. I think everybody else did make one. Tennessee is by far better than Arkansas as of right now. Ole Miss, better than Arkansas. They beat the Razorbacks in Little Rock back in October. Very close game. Arkansas should have won, but they still beat them. And their offense is outstanding. So, SEC right now probably would have to be Arkansas. ACC, very, very tough call there. Jeff Wilson, that's a very good question. Right now it would be Louisville, just because of the way they performed last season. They also went, I think, 2-10, looked abysmal. Were really just not competitive in any games. Didn't try, in my opinion. So, and towards the down the stretch. So I would say Louisville in the ACC, Arkansas in the SEC, the Bobby Petrino teams. Great questions, guys. Great chat. We actually did, like I said, we knocked out one of our topics we wanted to talk about. Kyler Murray, of course, that coming from Tate Hill. So great question from him. Great discussion overall today, though. Jeff Wilson, why isn't Michigan rivals with Michigan State? I mean, they are rivals. They're pretty big rivals, but I think Michigan and Ohio State much better and much bigger rival. The cocky noob says Ohio State is the best team in college football. Border Bob asking, will Mack Brown be able to make a much better team out of North Carolina this season? I love the hire of North Carolina to bring Mack Brown back. As some of you know, Mack Brown used to coach for the Tar Heels back into the 90s, I think early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken. But I think I don't know if it's going to happen this year, Border Bob. I don't know if he's going, because North Carolina was once again very, very bad this past season. I don't know if he's going to make that big of an impact this year, but I think he will get them there. We saw what he was able to do there in his first stint in North Carolina. We saw what he was able to do, a phenomenal job at Texas. Of course, Texas, I think, a better market than North Carolina. But I think give him a couple of years. Mack Brown is a heck of a coach. I think one of the better head coaches of all time. I'd put him up there in a list of top coaches. He would be in there for me. Not this year, but very soon. And Cocky Noob getting a little bit of responses of saying he said Ohio State's the best team, and everybody bouncing back saying absolutely not. Clemson. How can you deny that Clemson's the best team in college football when they just won the national championship in dominating fashion? There's no argument there in my eyes. But, of course, it's about to be a new year. We'll see if Clemson can uphold that title or if someone else will take over for them. And last question, we're going to start wrapping things up. We're about to hit the hour mark. That usually seems to be our average about how long we like to keep these live streams going. But our last question from Trey Olstadt. What do if I pronounced that right, I hope I did, what do I think about Wisconsin this year? And the Badgers, as we've mentioned, being one of the most disappointing teams in all of college football last season, starting off the season number 4, losing to BYU, and that's what officially did them in, was that loss to BYU. I think the team lost a lot of, I think the morale for that team went down. Even though it wasn't a conference game, I think they had their sights set not just on a Big Ten championship and getting revenge on Ohio State, but getting to the college football playoff after going undefeated the year before and losing to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. This year, as some of you may have heard, Alex Hornibrook has just entered the transfer portal as quarterback. Emperor of Rome, good to see you. Glad you were able to join us. We will see you again on Sunday. Hope to see you again Sunday, but thank you for joining us once again, and thank you for being a heck of a moderator and bringing some good discussion. But in terms of Wisconsin, Trey, I think they are arguably still going to be in contention for a Big Ten championship appearance. Not necessarily winning it, but appearance. They still have Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in all of college football. It's going to be interesting to see if they can get the job done there. Hornibrook, I think some people are glad that they're going to be gone, or that he's going to be gone. I thought that he was very sporadic, but did give the Badgers a little bit of consistency there. But I think it was probably about time. Will Paul Chryst be able to turn this team around? I think that he can. He's a good head coach. People have down years. Wisconsin, though, will not get back to where they were 2 years ago or even 3 years ago. That's just not going to happen. Not now, at least. Yeah, it's unfortunate for a team that does have quite a bit of talent, but I just don't see that happening this season. And a couple of people saying that Wisconsin did recruit well, picked up some big-time players, 5-star offensive tackle, 5-star quarterback. Yes, absolutely. Maybe he'll start as a freshman. We'll have to wait and find out. That's up to Paul Chryst. But, it is really good. Wisconsin still has plenty of talent, but I wouldn't put them up in terms of being a national title contender again, or even a Big Ten title contender right now. They might be able to win their division and get there, but I'm not going that far yet. Of course, wait till June. We're going to have much more analysis on the Badgers then, and we'll be able to give you a better explanation about that come that time. So that's going to be about all the time we have here today for this live stream. I want to thank you guys all for joining us. I want to thank you, though, for those that, I think it was Border Bob and Mr. Britt Hall for the Super Chat contributions. We certainly do appreciate those. Those go a long ways, more than you guys know. I want to thank you guys for joining us on this Thursday afternoon for the live stream. Stay tuned over the course of the weekend for an actual video that will be dropping here very soon, probably ranking the new head coaching changes And make sure you come back here on Sunday as well for another live stream. Bring your questions, comments, concerns, anything and everything college football, really any sports related. Mike Myrick, good to see you. All of you guys, good to see you again. And we will see you once again on Sunday night for another live stream.